Good morning, everyone. Good morning, District 1. All right, that's right. Get up. Give a hand clap to yourself, please, please, please. Clap to yourself, please, please, please. Well, good morning. I'm Detroit City Councilman James Tate, representing District 1. Since 2013, we have been hosting district-wide community meetings on the fourth Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. COVID-19 has changed a lot of things since the first case was reported in Detroit in early March. Because of social distancing requirements and the fact that we remain in a pandemic, I would like to welcome you to the very first ever virtual District 1 monthly meeting for June 2020. Now, missing from today's meeting will be the shared laughter, hugs, handshakes, and overall person-to-person fellowship that have become a part of our monthly gatherings. COVID-19 may have separated us physically, but nothing can separate us from our community spirit. And thanks to technology, we actually have the ability to bring the time-sensitive and important information to you right here, that same kind of information that you expect at the D1 monthly meeting. Today we have 3 topics that you should know about, and all have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The City of Detroit's Chief Public Health Officer, Denise Fair, drops by to provide us with an update on where we stand in the fight against COVID-19 in Detroit, as well as the controversy of states potentially opening up too soon and how the current spike of infections around the country affects us here. Also, every summer, the City of Detroit hires up to 8,000 young people to work at job sites throughout the city to help them perfect their soft skills and explore potential career paths. This year, the majority of the jobs will be performed virtually, but that does not mean it's going to be a case of kids just wasting time on a computer. Find out how Detroit's Workforce Development Director plans to grow Detroit's young talent during the pandemic. But first up, Michigan's Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, joins us to highlight her plans to make certain that all eligible Michigan voters and residents have access to safe and secure voting, either in person or by absentee ballot, for the upcoming critical August and November elections. She's been called out by the President of the United States and sued by some of his supporters, but she's not wavering. Find out why. Here's Michigan Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. And we're now here with Madam Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman. It's great to be here. Great to see you.
All right. So, before we get into the voting, the absentee voter piece, I've got to talk about the last time I saw you was a few weeks ago at for the protest. And it was very moving for me to be out there with all those young people from different nationalities, different races, different municipalities even, coming together for this issue of equality, not just in the city of Detroit, but throughout this world for people of color. You were there, you were on the microphone. What did you get from being there and that experience, and why was it so important for you to be there on that day?
Yeah, I mean, first, we're 2 weeks out, so I think we all tested, which is always a risk you incur, of course, showing up and being a part of a large gathering. So good, but it's a really important is that history since its inception in various different ways. And so I was proud to be a part of it. And it really came to me, it reflected so many things, so many people coming together from, community leaders and, voices of the community, former candidates, current candidates for different offices, so politically engaged residents. Then you also had sports figures there, Joy Bell sharing a very personal story, the entire coaching staff of the Lions being there, and Michigan State Police and other officers being there in solidarity and marching alongside and protecting those who are marching. And it was really beautiful. And the fact that it took place on the MacArthur Bridge in solidarity with those who walked on bridges in the past, like the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which we hope will soon be renamed in honor of John Lewis. But the bridges in the past that helped push for change. And to me, I think so much of what we do now, and as I talked about that day, we have to ensure this is more than a moment. We have to ensure, while it is tremendously inspiring to see people come together and really push for change and seek to dismantle structural racism that has never, been dismantled and is in many ways reinforced in recent years, to work to highlight ongoing injustices, ongoing sacrifices, ongoing deaths, murders, and other terrible tragedies that afflict communities of color, and through that afflict all of us. But to raise awareness about that, to make this an important moment is good, but we've got to keep momentum, and we've got to look for real change. To me, one of the inspiring things about the classical civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s was the federal legislation that came out of it: the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act of 1968, that really were crowning achievements of those who came together, who sacrificed so much to raise awareness around injustices and actually demonstrate impact and change. So I think it's also on us who hold public office at the city level, at the state level, and even the federal level, to also respond in kind, as so many have and our governor has, with real change, legislation, and the like. And for those who are marching, to hold us accountable and ensure that we are reflecting the values of our residents and seeking justice for all.
Yeah, and you just said something very important. I mean, there's a need, there's a desire, there absolutely is almost a requirement when we talk about a movement of this nature where you have people who are protesting on the ground. But there has to be some transition to a change in legislation. Otherwise, you're bringing attention to an issue, but not really making a lot of change. And when we start talking about change, you created a firestorm when you decided that we needed to address or adjust to the issue that we're in terms of this COVID-19 situation. You suggested a change. You move forward with a change that would send out absentee ballots to all of Michigan's 7.7 registered voters. Talk to us a little bit about why you decided to do that. And I know there's been some pushback as well. But first of all, why was that important for us to open the door? We just a few years ago, just 2 years ago when you were elected, opened up the door for no excuse absentee voting. So now, why is it so important to make sure that every voter has the opportunity to vote absentee in the state of Michigan?
Well, it's exactly what you just said. It's their right. It's voters' rights to be able to vote by mail, to vote absentee if they choose to do so. And my job as the chief election officer for the state of Michigan is to, ensure every voter is fully educated about how to have their voice heard and their vote counted. And that's it. That's my job. That's what I'm doing. And that was what was behind our decision to mail applications to every registered voter, so that if they wanted, they would know that they could vote by mail and they'd know exactly how to do so. And it reflected a lot of different principles. But I think first and foremost, recognizing that we're in this time of great uncertainty, and particularly throughout the spring when various other states, not ours, we were on schedule, but other states postponed elections. Didn't help anything. You still saw chaos in Georgia and other states, but there were decisions to move election dates that I worried created a precedent that elections could be postponed. And to me, democracy is essential. We must ensure that our voters' ability to hold their elected officials accountable is sacrosanct and is not changed or altered in any way. So I wanted to provide certainty to every voter in the state that this fall our elections will happen, they will be on schedule, they will be on time, and the right to vote will be protected. And then secondly, we wanted to assure citizens that regardless of what occurred in the health situation or the economic crisis that we're now in, that they will have a right to vote by mail, that right to vote is protected, and that I will make sure every citizen who wants to use it is able to use it. So this mailing was meant to communicate really that element of certainty in this time of great uncertainty, and then to give people in their hands the ability to simply fill out and return the application and express their choice to vote by mail this fall.
So, and this is, from what I read and everything I've heard you say, this doesn't sound like a partisan issue, but unfortunately it appears, I know you're a Democrat, you have a D next to your name. And there's a lot of pushback that's come from the person in the White House who has an R by his name, and other folks who support him, who says that this is an attempt that opens up the possibility of voter fraud. And it just amazes me, because I don't think you're sending out any applications based upon what party you're in. This is for all of the Michigan 7.7 registered voters, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Correct. And that's important too, that a lot of parties, political parties, organizations are going to be sending out the same application because it's available on our website. Like anyone can do this. And we wanted to make sure that where you lived and what lists you may or may not be on did not determine whether you got this application sent to you. We wanted as early as possible to create this baseline of equality, making sure everyone would get the application. And so it was really important to us, and it had the secondary impact as well by sending to every voter in our voter file this application. It also enables us through bounce backs, or if someone receives a envelope to someone who's passed away or who has moved or is no longer at that address, they can send it or hit return to sender, and that gets back to us and the local clerk and enables us to update our voter files effectively. So it's a win-win. It actually promotes better security and integrity while ensuring that we're able to protect access to the vote as well and make sure everyone knows their rights. So in my view, very simple decision. It's the reason why myself and many secretaries of state have done this across the country, Democrats and Republicans. And so here we are in Michigan, and I think, you know, Michigan's going to play an important role this year in our election process, and that's part of the reason why at this point anything we do is going to raise attention and potentially a firestorm. But I'm just going to do what's best for the voters every day, and all voters, and ensure, you know, that their voices are heard and their votes are counted.
So I just want to make it clear that, you know, we're not looking at right now any rogue Secretary of State, for the simple reason every poll that I've seen during this COVID pandemic that we've been in, dating all the way back in March, indicates that overwhelmingly Americans support absentee voting, the ability to vote remotely. I mean, we're talking about polling numbers of 67%, 69%, 64% of all Americans. So that pushback, how severe do you think, how realistic do you think it is? We know, again, it's something in court. And I don't know if you can talk about it because it's a lawsuit, but we know that there's a lawsuit that's out there, 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken. How realistic do we think that it is for the opposition, if you will, those individuals who do not want to see an increase in voters? How realistic is it that they'll possibly win or gain some kind of influence?
I feel confident that I not only have the authority, but also responsibility to educate voters about their rights, which is all that this mailing was doing. It was clearly within my responsibility under the law. Times in which local clerks sent out mailings to people, and it was during an election year, so it was seen as campaign literature using public funds. So none of that is applicable here. So we feel quite, that what we're doing, I mean, as you like 70% of voters amended our state constitution in 2018 to enshrine this right to vote by mail in our state constitution. And it's a new, day for democracy. It's the first election cycle in which this right is in place. And so that to me means, I have a responsibility to make sure everyone knows about this new right, especially in this time of a pandemic, when people want the certainty that they'll still be able to vote and not have to sacrifice their health in order to do so.
So let's go back in 2018 in November when the voters voted in proposal 18-3. What did that allow voters, what privilege, if you will, did it allow voters in Michigan to be able to establish and feel?
I think it will establish new rights for voters in our state on really 3 fronts. One, a right to register to vote or ensure that voter registration is not a barrier to anyone from voting. It gave citizens a right to vote by mail, and it also gave them a right to post-election audits, meaning the ability to audit and make sure our election machines are accurately counting the paper ballots that are fed into them. So we're implementing those audits this year. We're implementing the right to vote by mail for every citizen. And on the voter registration side, that first right I talked about, citizens can now register to vote up to and on election day at their local clerk's office. So no one should feel that they can't vote because they're not registered, because even on election day itself, you can go to the clerk's office and register and get your ballot and return it right there. It's a really easy way to ensure that everyone who's eligible to vote You can also register to vote online. You can register to vote automatically when you come to one of our branch offices or do any driver's license transaction. So there's a lot of ways that people can be registered, and importantly, it ensures that no one is blocked from voting because they're not registered. The other thing I want to mention, this isn't a new right, but it's one that oftentimes people aren't aware of, which is we've been partnering with the Department of Corrections and other institutions to make sure returning citizens know a criminal history, parking tickets, and all that other type of things you might hear and rumors. None of that impacts your right to vote. Everyone has a right to vote, regardless of criminal history, regardless of anything in your past. And so we want everyone to know that. We want people to know that their voting right is sacrosanct, and it's one that we're all fighting to protect.
So what voters had for the first time ever in the March primary a chance to actually get to the ballot booth under 18-3. What were those results? What did they look like? How did people respond to this new opportunity to vote absentee with no excuse to register up until the last day? How did voters respond to that?
Well, we saw more people voting by mail than ever before, which is a really encouraging thing, especially because in a few months later on May 5th, we had almost 99% of people voting by mail in those local elections. And it also demonstrated that the more people know how to request to vote by mail, the more people will take advantage of that convenience. And it also underscored the importance of making sure if you do vote by mail, that you are taking every step to correctly complete your ballot and return it on time. That ensures that it's counted. Oftentimes when we show up to vote in person, we fill out our ballot, and if we make a mistake, we can fix it right there. You can call your local clerk if you're voting from home and you make a mistake to get a replacement ballot, importantly, but we want to make sure that any mistakes you make or any changes you want to make, how to fix that as well. So we'll be engaging multiple voices in a prominent voter education effort over the next few months so that people know their rights and know how to ensure that their votes are accurately cast and counted.
So with the increased amounts of individuals who are voting and applying to vote, that creates a whole nother challenge for you and the various clerks around the state. Talk to us a little bit about what those challenges are and how you all are meeting those challenges.
Well, one of the challenges is usually your ballots are voted in the precinct and counted right there. But when people are voting by mail, right now, clerks can't even begin opening those envelopes and begin processing them to prepare them to be counted until election day itself. So it's going to take a lot longer than we may typically be accustomed to actually get the results of many elections and races this year, because the actual particularly in August, where you'll have a lot of close races up and down the ticket, up and down the ballot, we all may need to be prepared to allow our clerks a little bit more time to open these envelopes, process them centrally, because there's just so more being counted that way as opposed to at the precincts themselves.
So let me ask you, do we anticipate, let me back up. Has there, to your knowledge, been a conference or communication with the various clerks within the state of Michigan to, again, try to make sure that this is as seamless as a process as possible? I mean, we know, and I'm glad that we're putting out the word now, that we may have to wait a little bit longer to get those results. But to your knowledge, has there been a meeting of the minds, if you will, of the various clerk's offices to make sure that there's some kind of uniformity that's taking place?
Well, the uniformity really is my responsibility at the state level, and we have 1,500 clerks in the state of Michigan, and then 83 county clerks on top of that. Now, the clerk with the largest number of districts is Clerk Winfrey in Detroit, and then we also have Clerk Brown in Flint and our clerk in Grand Rapids as well. So that, obviously the clerks of the largest cities have the largest number of voters in precincts and the biggest task ahead of them. But we have some clerks in townships with 400 voters. And so, making sure that not just everything is equal, but also that there are local variations in place to allow for more rural communities to have more latitude, to allow for urban communities to have more ease of access to the vote is all very important to consider. So it's actually a really good partnership between our state, making sure everyone has access to the kind of basic rights and equality, and then our local clerks kind of taking those guidance and directives, and making it their own and applying it in a way that makes sense for their community.
So for someone who's watching right now and they're interested, can you walk us through what that process looks like for someone who is deciding to absentee vote for the very first time? They receive that application from your office, they fill out the information, they mail it in. What happens at that point?
Well, first, notably in the city of Detroit, we partnered with the city clerk to mail out applications. So applications to Detroit voters will be coming from the city clerk, and that's the case in Grand Rapids and a few other areas. And where clerks were unwilling or didn't have the resources to do it, we did it at the state level, again, making sure that everyone got the application. Now, once you get it, I think be aware of two things. One, you can get it, fill it out, and return it. And you can check the box for August and November, and in doing so, request to automatically be mailed a ballot 40 days prior to August and November's elections. And then when that time comes, you'll have, again, the ballot will be mailed to you 40 days prior, so you'll have plenty of time to complete it and return it. We recommend you do so as soon as possible just to avoid any potential delays, but we also will have ballot drop boxes installed throughout the state for people to return their ballots there, and your local clerk can tell you where yours is. Here in Detroit, you'll have satellite offices as well as the city clerk's office that will also receive ballots if you don't want to mail them back. Now, importantly, all of those ballots will be counted in a central place out of, I think it's TCF Center now. That's where the absentee ballot board meets and processes and counts all the ballots throughout the day. And they've got a lot of resources and people to go. And then so importantly, you can return that option and go online. And if you have your driver's license with you, you can complete the form online and submit it online. Certainly mailing it is a way to ensure you get added to the list. You'll get your ballot mailed directly to you, and then you can vote it from home and return it either by mail, drop box.
So let me ask, if you apply for absentee ballot this year for these two upcoming elections for 2020, are you automatically put on the rolls for AV moving forward in future years?
Well, you can check a box on the application to request to always get an application. Every time an election is forthcoming, an application will automatically be sent to you, so you can request your ballot. And so that's an option as well if you'd like to continue to get the application sent to you. Under state law, you can only request it for one election and the primary. So that's why the August primary and the November general, you can request for both with one application. And some who requested to vote ballot in March, just a few, I think about 1 million of our 7 million voters or so requested to vote by mail in March, and then that can carry through to November as well. But if you're unsure of anything, you can certainly fill out an application. Again, it's just an application, nothing, there's nothing wrong with even filling out one or two and submitting them just to be sure. If your address changes, you can fill out another one as well, or update that with your clerk too. But once that's mailed in, you'll be signed up to get your August and November ballot.
And I just want to touch base. I got two more questions for you because, again, I know you got to roll. I know there's, again, go back to this fraud allegation, this potential of voter fraud. My research indicates that there are already states that have total absentee voting or ballot by mail. We're looking at Colorado, Hawaii, Utah, Washington, and I'm sure there's others that allow some form of absentee voting. Is there any proof that anyone has brought forward that has shown that there's been reasonable voters tampering as it relates to absentee voting? Yeah.
No, there hasn't, and where there is any issue, and it happens rarely, we catch it and we prosecute it. I mean, it's illegal. It's illegal to forge someone's signature on your ballot application. It's illegal to vote and steal someone else's vote or impersonate another voter. So the real protection, just like with anything, is making sure there are security provisions in place to deter people from committing the crime and also catch them when they do. And that's essentially what we place in our state and any other states. You have to sign your application and return it. The fact that you have to if you vote by mail, you have to sign the envelope that you return the ballot in to confirm that your signature is then matched with the other signatures on file. That's how we confirm your identity. And we are actually investing in upgraded signature verification software this year to make it even more accurate and better to compare signatures for our clerks as they go through that process. And so we're doing everything we can to protect the integrity and security of the process, but we also have to guard against attempts that will happen and will escalate in the months ahead to confuse voters about their rights, about the security of the process, as a way of sowing seeds of doubt and making people lose faith that their votes will be counted. And that's exactly what some people want. And we have to fight against that. So my goal is to also make sure not only that we're protecting everyone's vote, but that we're fighting back and pushing it back against any attempts to confuse or misinform voters about what's real and what's not and what their rights are this fall.
Last question. If I'm someone who filled out an absentee ballot, or I filled out an application for an absentee ballot, I received it, but on, August 4th or November 3rd, the next 2 election days, the spirit hits me. And I say, you know what, I actually want to go out and I want to go to the polls on that day. Will I invalidate anything? Is there a problem with me saying I don't want to do that? If I decide to receive an absentee ballot, am I locked in voting that way? Or am I allowed to vote any way I want in Michigan?
Great. Locked in. In fact, when you receive your ballot and you return it, then that is in your voter file. So when you show up to vote on election day in person, the poll worker will look down and see, oh, I see we sent you a ballot, but you haven't returned it. They will then invalidate that ballot in the file and make sure that no one else can return it, and then give you a new ballot to vote right then. And so that's always an fact. And we saw this in the presidential primary. If you do mail it back and decide, the Friday before election day that you want to change your vote or vote in right now and submit a written request for them to not count that ballot and destroy it that you sent in and give you the ability to vote in person the next day. So there are always contingency plans for the most part. And we want people to know all their choices. And if you ever have any questions, call your local clerk or go to our website or just email me at secretary@michigan.gov. We want to make sure everyone has access to all this information because it can, our goal is to make democracy work for you.
Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I just want to, again, implore people to recognize that the noise surrounding this year's elections are only going to increase in the months ahead. The rhetoric, the arguing, the mudslinging, and it's up to all of us to just focus on making sure our votes count and our voices are heard. So when you hear questionable or confusing things, go and seek out trusted sources of information from your councilman, from your clerk, from your Secretary of State. We're actually setting up a website at michigan.gov/vote that will debunk myths out there. So if you hear something, say something. Help us track down efforts to confuse or deceive voters about their rights, because that's going to be a big part of what we do this year to protect everyone's right to vote this fall.
Michigan's Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, we want to thank you again for joining us today. A lot of great information, and we really appreciate you doing your best to protect our vote and increasing the numbers of folk out there who are voting. So I appreciate you, and please stay safe. We're still in the COVID situation. We're still in a pandemic.
You too, Councilman. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.
Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Detroit City Councilman James Tate, representing District 1, and welcome back to our virtual District 1 monthly meeting. We have today a topic that many of you are very familiar with. We've been talking about Grow Detroit's Young Talent for a number of years. This is year number 6. It keeps growing. I remember back, I was part of the group that worked on Grow Detroit's Young Talent before it had that name. And it was a small group of nonprofits, the government, just coming together. And to see where it is now, I believe we started out with like 3,000 jobs. And here we are with now more than 8,000 jobs being offered to young people during the summer months. So I won't say any more. Before I go any further, I would like to invite with us today, and thank you for joining us, the Executive Director of Workforce Development, Nicole Sherrard Freeman. Thank you for joining us. Joining her as well is Stephanie Nixon, who is the Chief Program Officer for the Detroit Employment Solutions. And last but certainly not least is Marie Hocker, who is the Executive Director of that program that we've been talking about, Grow Detroit's Young Talent. Thank you all again for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
So we're talking again, we've gone from 3,000 or so young people to now more than 8,000 placements. That is a lot of places that we've got to figure out where young people are going to go, and to make sure that it's not just a babysitting program over the summer, but they'll absolutely get skills that will help springboard them into their professional life. Talk to us a little bit about how you make sure that takes place, that the young people that participate get something out of it, and it's not just credit, or in this case it's a couple of dollars for the summertime. How does this potentially improve their outcomes as they get a little older?
Yeah, so Councilmember Tate, thank you so much for the introduction and for the invitation to join you, and hello to all the residents in D1. Glad to be here. We are really excited about GDYT this year. The first thing I have to say is that we wouldn't be able to pull this off without council's support. So council's financial support and your connections to us in the district, and the way you encourage us to think bigger and do more. So we never for a moment consider canceling GDYT. Other cities across the nation have canceled their summer youth employment program, but not one time did we think about not offering GDYT for 14 to 24-year-olds this summer. In fact, we think it's more important this summer than it has ever been, because our young people are experiencing enough pressure and enough trauma and difficulty from the disruption to their school year, the disruption to their families' lives, their parents' lives, their communities. It was really important to us to maintain some stability and be sure that we had opportunities for young people this summer. I wonder, Councilmember Tate, if I could share my screen now.
Absolutely.
And just talk a little bit about how GDYT will work this summer.
Yeah, because we're still in a situation where office buildings are still closed, and those that are opening up are doing so in a limited capacity. So I remember when you came to committee, you talked about having some jobs that were going to be offered in person, but the great majority of them were going to be virtual opportunities.
That's right, Councilmember. So we've got about 600 or so opportunities that we're confident will be face-to-face. We're reserving those, though, for our older youth, so the 18 to 24-year-olds in the program, for a couple reasons. Those on-site opportunities, every employer will provide personal protection equipment, or PPE, for the youth on-site. But we wanted to reserve those for the older youth, because we believe that you need to be 18 or older. You need to be an adult to decide whether you are comfortable accepting an on-site opportunity in this new co-COVID world, as we talk about it. We're not past COVID. It's not not over. We are still very much facing a COVID crisis in this community. So the majority of experiences for those older youth, 18 to 24, who are not comfortable going on work site, and for our younger youth, 14 to 17, will be online. But what we're excited about is that the experience is going to be better in many cases, we think, and the hours and the pay structure will be the same. So it'll still be 6 weeks, 120 hours, just like it has been every summer for the past 6 years. But we've got a virtual structure. And so what that means is our young people will work with the community-based organizations like Connect Detroit and their partners that they've always worked with. But they'll be in small groups online. They'll be paired with a youth mentor who will oversee a small group of young people and will ensure that they're able to get online and navigate to the right experience.
This mentor is not going to be knocking on their door either. They're in the virtual world too, correct?
That's right. It's all online,
Okay.
all online. And so these youth, I should call them monitors, these youth monitors will be sure that young people who've committed to the program are showing up, know which website to go to, know how to get logged in, know how to complete the online assessment, which is the first step, so that our young people have a choice and can decide which program is right for them. And we'll be there to help guide them through their project assignments. Council member and D1 members, that's what's different about this year. We think there's a better structure to the experience because young people choose. There are project-based assignments, individual assignments, small group assignments, and then a capstone project. And Councilmember Tate has counseled me in the past to be really specific when we use terms like that. So a capstone project is basically a big project, right? So those of you who are watching remember projects in school or have projects from work. Think of it as the final project where you demonstrate all that you have learned in a class. Our young people will still be paid as they always have been, except it's going to feel like they're earning a little more than they have in the past.
Why is that?
And that's because our young people, it's going to be because our young people are paid with stipends. And so they won't have to, they won't be paying payroll taxes. And so that's going to feel like not a big bump in their wage, but that's going to feel like a few more dollars in their pocket than they have normally had.
Why did that happen this year? What caused that change?
Stephanie, you want to talk about that?
Yes, because the experience is training. They're not actually working and earning a wage for a job. So under training, we can offer training stipends. So under the definition of training stipends, those are not wages and they're not subject to taxes. So it makes it really, really convenient for the young person. But yeah, that's the difference.
Okay.
It also lets us stretch our dollars a little further because fundraising for with our employers and our philanthropic partners is, they got a lot of priorities, and GDYT is still important to them, but they're also investing in a lot of COVID initiatives, and so it allows us to take a dollar and stretch it further.
So I know I can hear somebody right now as you speak say, I remember the kids used to get bus passes. What about now since they're at home on a computer or let me not say they're at home because they may be at wherever in front of a computer getting training. Are there bus passes included as well, just in case?
I can
go ahead, Steph.
I'm sorry, Nicole. I was just going to say, definitely for those who will be working in person, they will definitely benefit from the free bus services over the summer. And if there's any instances where a young person has to do something that's separate from their home workspace, we will make sure that they have transportation. Yes.
But it's got to communicate to you.
Yep, just let us know. Mm-hmm.
All right.
So I talked a little bit about, Councilmember, how many on-site opportunities we have. I want to be sure that the community knows that we have more than 7,700 seats for our 14 to 24-year-olds through these virtual experiences. What we're counting on are three things, Councilmember. A young person has to have a device in order to participate. And we know that a good number of our young people will be covered by the device they receive through the Detroit Public Schools Connected Futures Initiative. So young people will either have a device through Connected Futures from their DPS CD school, or they will have a device through their charter school. We are working to close the gap for all Detroit youth, and Bank of America has very generously picked up the tab for 640 units for our Opportunity Youth young people. So those are young people who are 16 to 24. Maybe they've graduated from high school, maybe they haven't, not connected to a job. Bank of America has paid for that. And Skillman has already committed to ensure 714 devices for young people. So that's a device, internet connectivity, and help navigating the internet. So we've been thinking about this broadly to ensure that our young people have a good experience.
Let me ask you this, what type of jobs are we talking about? Or what type of training for what type of careers?
industry-led training opportunities for young people, and that's where they will earn credentials in high growth, high demand occupations. So coding, CAD, pre-apprenticeship training, CNA training. The young people will also have a virtual experience in those occupational training, on those occupational training platforms, and they will be able to earn credentials, and then those credentials will translate into permanent jobs at the end of the summer. So we've been able to do that since probably 2016, and we build on it every year. So what we're excited about is that we can still offer that this year, and those young people will earn those credentials and be ready for permanent unsubsidized opportunities in September.
Awesome. And it looks like you're taking us to one of the websites that is used for the training.
Yes. This is our virtual job shadow website. This platform, for the most part, our 14 to 17-year-olds will be exposed to this platform. They will have customized assignments. They will go in, they will take an assessment based on their skills and interests. And as you can see, all of the occupations that they would be exposed to, there's video, and the videos actually take them to the job. There's videos that interview people that are actually in the industry. So they'll see people that look like them working in unique occupations. Look at the veterinarian technician. Who knew? Who knew you'd be, holding an animal like that, or that opportunity was there? These are the kinds of jobs, this is the kind of education that that's required of these occupations. So they will have an opportunity to be exposed to things that under normal circumstances in GDYT, they would not be exposed to. So we're just really, really excited about this platform. And to Nicole's point, we're really, we believe that they'll learn a lot more than what they would have under normal circumstances. You see the education, these local colleges and universities, the degrees that are available there, and just what those schools offer and what that would mean for them to build their career. So just an impressive website. Young people, I was determined to find something that was exciting, that was energetic, that the young people, they've been in school a semester where they've been online and trying to work through some of the instructions. This is going to be different. So this gives you a summary of what it looks like, but it really is something that we are confident young people will enjoy.
And it's good that you're excited about it, because it's one thing to kind of walk through it and do so without any enthusiasm, but I can tell that this new change, this new challenge is something that excites you as well. We're running low on time. Before we wrap up, Marie, you as being the executive director of Grow Detroit's Young Talent, we talked about what the young person would get from a career standpoint. I know there were a number of years that were calculated from the various cohorts that showed that Grow Detroit Young Talent, young folks were more likely to be enrolled in school afterwards, to take the SAT, to graduate from high school. So many other different elements that are involved that they can take beyond just a career. Because, let's be honest, this is really a chance for them to kind of try something out. It's not necessarily where they're going to go and what they're going to do, but what are the other ancillary benefits that come as a result of being a part of Grow Detroit's Young Talent? Yeah.
Absolutely, Councilman Tate, I really appreciate that question. Being a part of GDYT, as you mentioned, really just gives you that exposure to so many different career pathways, and you've had the opportunity to really figure out and begin to clarify, what career pathways am I really interested in? What areas do I really want to contribute to? And I think that's something that's really empowering, and that's a huge benefit for our young people. Of course, the other huge benefit is that they have an opportunity to earn a meaningful wage. So that's also critically important, especially in this COVID environment that we're in, where our economy has really been devastated in many ways. And I think the other really neat thing about being a part of GDYT is they have an opportunity to build a professional network. As Stephanie mentioned earlier, our young people will have an opportunity to engage directly with employers who work in those specific industries. So they'll be able to engage with them within the virtual classroom. So that's really neat, right? To be able to meet someone in manufacturing or in construction or in healthcare that's actually doing the work and actually learn directly from that professional. So it's just really cool all the way around.
So is it safe to say that the young people who participate, because I know you have some frequent flyers, you got young folk who come every year. Is it safe to say that they don't just come for the money, but they come for the entire experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a huge
Yeah.
benefit to them to come and be a part of it. It's definitely beyond the wage for sure.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. If there's any, for folks, I know that we've gotten beyond the point where people can apply for Grow Detroit's Young Talent. I think you even extended the time because we were in COVID, but we're now past that time. But there's going to be a next year and another next year and a year after that. We're going to make sure, because we've got to make sure our kids have a springboard towards their careers. But for those who want additional information on Grow Detroit's Young Talent, where should they go? And then, in the event that they are in line, and want to call and check up on something, who should they call and where should they go?
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, so all of our young people should visit www.gdyt.org. You can find all the information that you'll ever need about GDYT at the website. They can also go to the youth tab to learn exactly everything they need to know about the benefits of being a young person in the program.
All right. Again, we want to thank you for joining us. Nicole Sherrard-Freeman, Executive Director of Workforce Development, Ms. Stephanie Nixon, Chief Program Officer, Detroit Employment Solutions Corporation. I always want to say something else. Detroit Employment Solutions Corporation, DESC, and of course, Marie Hocker, who is the Executive Director of Grow Detroit's Young Talent. Again, thank you for joining us. You all stay safe and make sure you take care of yourself in this ever-changing world.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thanks.
Hi, we're back now with Chief Health Officer Denise Fair joining us today. She's going to give us some information about where we stand in the city of Detroit, state of Michigan, the U.S., but certainly in the city of Detroit, where we stand with COVID-19. Director Fair, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, so we, we're still in the pandemic right now. The state has began its phases of reopening. Talk to us about where we stand today. I know we saw recently just a small spike that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Do you believe that that's a result of the state reopening, maybe too fast, or maybe in some areas something's going on we just don't know yet? What do you make of this?
Sure. So I know at the health department, we look at data every day on a regular basis to make sure that we are preventing any spikes. So the first case occurred in early March, so March 11th, and we had about 50 or so new cases every day. And then we had about 200, 300 cases. So far right now, we're only at about 15 to 20 new cases every day. So that's not really a spike. The curve is heading in the right direction, and we want to make sure that we prevent a spike. So far, the Detroiters have really led this effort. They're washing their hands, they're practicing social distancing, and I think that is really one of the ways that we have beat COVID. And that's the only way that we're going to continue to beat COVID is by making sure we're all accountable. We're Detroiters, we know what to do. And I think we've done an incredible job so far.
And because we've been on lockdown for so long and we're finally starting to get out, is there a concern that people are looking to travel and go to some of those places that may not be doing as well as the city of Detroit and even the state of Michigan?
Yeah, so as health officer, I continue to remain concerned about another wave occurring. But I drive around the city all the time and I see people wearing their masks. I see them practicing social distancing. Now, I do know there are some people who are trying to be a little bit more relaxed and comfortable and not really wearing their masks. But if we do that, then we are going to have another spike. If you look at a couple of different states, so California, Arizona, Florida, they've opened up, and they've opened up a little bit too soon. And now some of them are shutting back down again. The bars and restaurants are shutting down. I don't want that to happen here in the city. We worked so hard. We don't want to go backwards. So if Detroiters are still, if they are mindful, if they remember to be accountable and practice the social distancing, then we'll be fine. But you know, it's the summer months. People want to go out and they want to have a good time. They want to barbecue. They want to go to the pools. And I encourage people to still do that, but just be mindful.
Well, you know, it was interesting is, again, we were on lockdown, and then the unfortunate death of George Floyd created a cause for many to protest, and there was social unrest that happened around the country. And you know, I saw it, you saw it, the videos. I was out there as well, had my mask on. There were a lot of people who did not have masks on during the at least the early stages, for sure, of the civil unrest that took place around the country. What we're seeing now in every report is that, strangely enough, and I'm thankful, but strangely enough, there hasn't been a spike as a result of these acts of protest and civil unrest. What do you make of that? I mean, we've been telling people keep the mask on, but here we are seeing people, you know, almost face to face. These droplets that we talk about on a regular basis are flying everywhere, I'm sure. No mask on. Some people have masks on. Some have down to their, you know, below their nose. You name it, you saw it. What do you make of, you know, this idea that, you know, we're telling people to have masks on, wear masks, but here we are in this major situation that's taking place, and we haven't seen a spike as a result of it.
Yeah, so I was actually really surprised because, again, as health officer, we're looking at data all the time. And I even thought to myself that within about 2 or 3 weeks after protest had occurred, we would see a spike, but we're not seeing that at all. And this is not just in Detroit, this is across the country in regards to the protesters. However, what we are seeing is that the majority of our cases, over 50% of our cases, are from young people now. And we did not see that at the height of COVID. And so if you look at our dashboard on the Detroit Health Department website, again, most of our new cases are now younger people, younger around the age of 20, 25. Now, I will say the mask I have right here is a very powerful tool. And the reason why it's a powerful tool, is because it helps to prevent droplets from spraying from our mouths. So let me just take the time to show you the proper way to wear a mask. This is a surgical mask. All you do is place it over your ears like this, but it's not okay just to leave it like this. This doesn't do anything. This is right here is a fashion statement, okay? So it's important to make sure you cover your nose and your mouth. And there's also a little wire right here at the very top of the nose. Make sure you press that down to make sure that there is a proper kind of suction that will prevent droplets from entering. So it's always important, if you can't practice social distancing for whatever reason, as long as you have the mask on, that is going to prevent you from COVID-19.
Yeah, that was very, very surprising information. Thank you for that demonstration as well.
Sure.
Keeping up with masks. So, you know, when we first found ourselves in this pandemic, people hit the shelves, took masks from everywhere, and you couldn't find them. Now you're finding, you know, places and entities that you never thought would make masks, branding them and placing masks. Is there any type of mask now that we have an inventory that we can choose from? Is there any masks that we should be using, should not be using, ones that we should have a little bit caution before we place in our own personal inventory?
Sure. So I think that the science has proven that if you are a healthcare worker, the only mask that you should be wearing is the N95 masks. The N95 mask is really important to prevent the spread of COVID if you are in a healthcare environment. The other option is the surgical mask that I have right here. But if you don't have access to a surgical mask, you can take an old bandana, a scarf, an old t-shirt, and you can make your own mask right at home for free. If you go online to the Detroit Health Department website or YouTube page or Facebook page, about 2 months ago, I recorded a video right here just on my iPhone, and it went viral. It was about 500,000 views. And so please make sure you take a look at that website. As long as the mask covers your face and your nose and your mouth, that's what's most important. You want to make sure that you are keeping yourself and your loved ones protected.
Awesome. And I did see that video. You did a great job.
Thanks.
So what we're seeing now, we're talking about vaccine, right?
Mhm.
We're opening up the economy all around the country, and there's talks of vaccines. When it first hit the shores of the U.S., and certainly when we went on lockdown in March, we started hearing about vaccines possibly from that time frame, 12 to 18 months, right? So now we fast forward 12 to 18 months, they said we would have a vaccine. Then you started hearing from the federal government, no, we're going to have a vaccine by the end of the year. Now we're starting to see, surprisingly, large-scale human trials of a vaccine taking place currently, right now, in South Africa as well as Brazil. What do we make of this idea of this fast-track vaccine that again, at one point in time you're saying 18 months, and now it's here just for 2 to 3 months to maybe even 4 months after it first hit the shores. So what's your take on the vaccine and the vaccine process?
Yeah, so I'm not a scientist, but I will encourage the scientists to do what they do best. I don't think this process should be rushed at all because we want a vaccine that works. And I would encourage those Detroiters who may have seen advertisements, join this trial for free. You want to stay away from those types of advertisements because what someone could be offering you is probably not the real thing right now. Let the experts do what they do. Right now, we don't have an estimated time frame for when the vaccine will be made available, but I will tell you that the Detroit Health Department is your source of truth. So as soon as we hear something that's validated by the CDC, we will let you know, but at this time, we have to be patient, we have to wait. It may not come this year, hopefully it'll come next year, but we need that so we can get back to normal operations. So I'm not really as pressed for timing because we want to make sure that vaccine is administered in the correct fashion.
So a phrase I always use is it's better right than rushed. And right now, it really feels like this thing is being rushed. And you have humans who are, being experimented on, and leading to the next question. So you have a lot of African Americans and people of color who just don't trust institutions, medical institutions, government, for various reasons. When we talk about the medical institutions, you look at Tuskegee experiment, you look at Henrietta Lacks. There's a lot of examples where Black people, folks of color, have not necessarily been treated properly. Let me just put it that way. There's a lot of people right now saying that there's no way that they're going to be vaccinated whenever this vaccine comes on board. How do we as the city of Detroit convince people? And let me just say this, there's not just Black folks who are saying it, there's some folks who are not people of color who've also called themselves anti-vaxxers, and they don't want vaccines either. So I don't want this to look like it's just a people of color issue. But when you look at the city of Detroit, 85% African American, that's certainly something that we have to consider. How do we, as the city of Detroit, convince people who have an aversion to vaccines, a medical institution based on past practices? How do we convince people that this is the right pathway to take?
Sure. So I think it's important to just have the conversation. Talk to them about what they're experiencing, what they're thinking about. One of the great things that we did for COVID-19 was to make sure we had a strong communication strategy. And we made sure that we were not just reacting, but we were responding to the current situation. We're in a pandemic. And so we needed to be that calming voice. We needed to be that source of truth. And so I know my role is going to be to continue to provide that communication, to let them know what the vaccine is, what are some of the effects of the vaccine, and just getting them comfortable with the fact that if you do get vaccinated, then you'll be protected. And so when the vaccine is ready to be administered, we'll have another large communication strategy. We'll sit down with folks because we want people to be vaccinated, but we do understand those who may not want to. And that's just, that's the reality.
How do you think if we have a large amount of people who refuse to take the vaccine or get it administered, do you think that that's going to affect our numbers at all?
Definitely. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think if they don't get vaccinated, they could still be asymptomatic. And that's something that I want to make sure everyone knows about. Asymptomatic is an unfamiliar term. Asymptomatic means that you could have COVID-19 and be perfectly healthy and could be spreading COVID-19 to all of your loved ones. So you could have COVID-19 but not have any symptoms at all. You couldn't, there's no coughing, no chills, no loss of sense of taste or smell. And so if you don't have the vaccine, then again, you're going to be infecting everyone. And I do feel as though we will have a spike. So again, going back to communication, education, making sure people feel comfortable with the vaccination, and also understanding, providing the education on what it means to be vaccinated with COVID.
So I mentioned earlier, we talked about the disparities, and we know that there was a huge disparity when you start evaluating the data of African Americans. We'll just look at this state, right? It's the same thing around the country, but we'll just look at this state. African Americans make up 12 to 14% of the population, but 40% of the deaths. That's a huge, huge disparity there. Now, I say that because earlier in the conversation, we talked about these clinical trials that are taking place right now in places where people of color reside, South Africa and Brazil. Taking us back here to the state of Michigan, there's a coronavirus task force that has been put in place on racial disparities. Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist is the chair. I don't know if you have any information that you can share on how far the task force has gotten up to this point. Because I know that, so when I read it, it indicates that the task force will investigate the causes of racial disparities and the impact of COVID-19 and recommend actions to address those disparities. So what have you heard so far from this task force? And I know it's not going to be wrapping up anytime soon.
Yeah, so one thing I'll share, and let me just kind of bring this home. You talked about 40% of all cases in Michigan were African American in terms of the deaths. But let me bring it home a little bit more. In the city of Detroit, 700,000 residents, 65% of all cases were African American. Of the deaths, it was 80%. So that's huge. And so COVID-19, I believe, has shed a lot of light on racial disparities, systemic racism. We've got to do better, okay? When we look at our healthcare system, when we look at just how we are treated, we have to do better. And there are protocols that need to be in place to make sure that we have an equitable experience across the board. And so I believe the task force has been working on ensuring equitable access to testing across the city of Detroit, across the state of Michigan. And I hope to hear from them in terms of what the progress has been. So far, from what I'm hearing, I think they have made a lot of progress. In Detroit, we have, I think, 7 or 8 new testing sites that'll be stood up over the next couple of weeks to make sure Detroiters have access to testing. In the city of Detroit, under Mayor Duggan's leadership, over the last 3 months, we've tested over 50,000 Detroiters through the state fairgrounds, as well as the health department. I think that has really helped us be successful to decrease the spread of COVID-19. So more to come. Really glad to hear about the task force and what their next steps are.
Awesome. Do we see a decline at all in the numbers of people who are deciding to get tested? I mean, it's free now and it's more accessible than it was before.
Yeah, actually, I was just speaking to our chief epidemiologist a couple days ago. Every day there's about 1,500 tests that are completed. But just in the last couple of weeks, we're down to about 1,200. And I'm a little bit concerned because I think people aren't as, I don't know, I mean, they're not, from what I'm seeing, not as interested in testing because they may not have symptoms. But I keep driving home the message, and I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but asymptomatic. I mean, you could be perfectly healthy and could have COVID-19. So go and get tested. I mean, it's simple. You can call the call center right now and get tested probably tomorrow, 313-230-0505. I've said it so many times, I've memorized it, but 313-230-0505, get tested. You don't need a doctor's note. You don't need symptoms. It's totally free. If you need a ride, we'll get you a ride. But that's really important to make sure that, that you're protected.
Last question on the test. There's some people who are afraid of getting the test because they've seen this swab get jammed up your nose. I'm sure you've had it, the test. Talk to us about what you experienced during the test.
Sure.
For those
So,
who may have the experience.
Yeah, so there are two types of tests. So at the state fairgrounds, the test is a little bit more invasive. I won't say that it's the most pleasant experience, but essentially what they do is they take a swab and they swab both nostrils. Some people say that I feel like they're scraping my brain, or I feel like they're touching my eyeball, but it's a quick experience, and you'll get your results within about 2 to 3 days. Also for our nail salon owners, our bar owners, the employees, our clergy, they can go to the Detroit Health Department and get a similar test. Their results are the same, but the Abbott testing at the health department, it's a little quicker, so you'll get your results in about 15 minutes. But it's essential. I mean, I'd rather have a painful test than have a painful experience with COVID-19.
So, Director Fair, talk to us a little bit about contact tracing. I know that is, that's a phrase that people really hadn't heard about in the past, but now it's starting to filter into their psyche. What is contact tracing, and why is it so important?
Sure. So thank you for bringing up that question. Contact tracing essentially is, we at the health department, we're going to contact you if you have a positive case. So if you have COVID-19, so if you're positive, someone from the health department will call you and say, we're sorry that you've tested positive, but we're here to help you. Please let us know if you have visited anybody over the last couple of days, have you gone somewhere, because we're going to trace all of the contacts. It's important, let's say if you were at your home and you were around 10 of your family members, we want to call them. It's completely confidential, but we'll say, someone that you were around had COVID-19, you could have been exposed, and so we want to make sure that you're aware and you should self-quarantine. So it's so important, if you get a call from the health department, please answer the phone. So far, we're calling everyone. We want to make sure you answer the phone, you give us some information so that we're able to keep the city of Detroit safe. So that's really important, and that's contact tracing.
So our contact tracing sounds a little bit different than some other places. Certainly, like I think Google and one of the other big internet companies came up with apps. So there's apps that are out there. So what's the benefit of having, and I think I know the answer, what's the benefit of having a live person gathering this data and contacting you versus an app?
So I'm not really familiar with the applications, the apps, but I think it's more of a human touch. We want to call and talk to you, and we want to answer all of your questions. And so I have a team of over 200 people at the health department, and we are here to serve the city of Detroit. So again, when we call you, we're going to have a conversation with you. I know this is a scary time, so I think it's good to have someone on the phone who will be sensitive to what you are experiencing. It's difficult to share emotions via an app.
So you talked briefly earlier about a potential of a second wave. Do you think that the second wave is realistic? I know we're, again, depending on who you talk to, and it's so interesting how this pandemic has become politicized. When you listen to people from the White House, they pretend as if this thing just doesn't exist anymore. It kind of went away. I think they were kind of hoping that it went away. We all are, but we got to still be realistic. They're saying that it's possibly not going to be a second wave. What are you saying straight up from the science of this thing? What's the possibility of a second wave hitting Detroit, the rest of this country, the rest of the world, as we get through this pandemic?
So we're already seeing a second wave in other states, which is why they are shutting back down. So states have reopened, they've gotten excited, the summer is here, and people are getting really comfortable. So, and you know, I will say that COVID-19 has not left us at all. We are not out of the woods. We have to continue remaining vigilant, but people are still dying. People are still being affected by COVID-19. This is still our reality. I know we have to move on and talk about new things that are happening in the city, but we still need to make sure that we are discussing COVID-19 and talking about what we can do to prevent a second wave from occurring. And I don't want there to be a second wave. I don't think anyone does. And based upon where we are right now, I really feel good about the direction that we are facing, or the direction that we're heading. What I am most concerned about, though, is preparing for the fall. Because in the fall, typically around mid-October or so, we have the flu. And so we know from the science that if you have the flu, and now if you have COVID-19, that could be even more deadly. So at the health department, we are gearing up efforts to provide a widespread flu vaccination initiative. And we're still ironing out some of those details right now. People need to be prepared. One of the great things that we've done too in the city is we're looking at the data and the science to drive our decision making. We're not just going to do things because we feel like it. No, we're going to look at the data, we're going to look at the science. And that's what we've done under Governor Whitmer as well as Mayor Duggan.
Thank you. So I know you're extremely busy. Thank you again for taking the time out. Sure. I don't want to ask all the questions. We actually have some residents who have a few questions for you as well.
Okay.
First up, we have Darlene Ross. Darlene Ross from EL78. Darlene Ross asks,
are there any citywide initiatives to help stop the spread of COVID-19 in our nursing homes?
Yeah, sure. Darlene, thank you for asking that question. So one of the first things that we did in the city was we focused on our seniors. Our seniors are the backbone of our community. And so in the city, we have 26 nursing homes, which is about 2,100 nursing home residents. So we partnered with Wayne State University, Henry Ford, as well as our fire department, our EMS, and of course the health department. And we tested all 2,100 nursing home residents and also some of the staff within about 10 days. We noticed that there was a 24% infection rate, which is really high. What we learned is that COVID-19 spreads really quickly amongst congregate settings. And that's our nursing homes. What we found is that 24% of those who tested positive, half of them were asymptomatic. So they didn't have any symptoms at all. So we had to make sure we were putting them first. We provided them with PPE. We spoke directly with the nursing home directors, gave them guidance on how to cohort their patients. We provided a lot of education. And so far, we have tested and retested the nursing home residents, and we're down to less than 5%. So we're making a lot of progress with our nursing home residents, and we didn't stop there. We also went to the senior apartments, tested over 70 buildings, almost 5,000 seniors. Again, we want to make sure they are protected. They're our most vulnerable population. And I'm really proud of the work that the health department has done to make sure our seniors are first.
thank you. We have our next question from Pamela. She's gonna get me for that. Pamela Samuel, Berglasser Community Association. She asks,
what is being put in place to protect the kids when they return to school, and will all the teachers have the same written information on why the extreme safety precaution with flyers for parents?
Yeah, so Pamela, another good question. So Governor Whitmer, the next couple of days, she will be launching the return to school effort. And it's an overview for everyone in the state of Michigan, for our schools and for our families. And so it'll have specific guidance on how to bring students back in a safe and equitable manner. We want to make sure that students feel safe, and also teachers, when they come back to the school. I know I've been appointed to serve on the task force and working closely with other public health experts. We've spent many hours developing recommendations, so they will be available soon. Again, we want to bring our students back in a safe and equitable manner, and more to come on that in the next couple of days from the governor's office.
All right, well, we have got two more for you. Next one coming up is from Michelle Ruffin with Malvern Hills. And she asked,
if you're outdoors and social distancing, is it still necessary to wear a mask?
Yeah, so good question again, Michelle. So it's, and I think I've showed this demonstration, but social distancing is great. The social distancing means that you are making sure that you are 6 feet away from your loved one, from your family, from your friend. And I don't think that's enough. I think social distancing is great, but if you're gonna be outside in the public, please make sure you wear your mask. And again, don't just wear it around your chin as a fashion statement. Please make sure that you have that full coverage over your face and your mouth, your nose and your mouth. Again, this is coming from not only the governor's office, but as well as the health department. So again, when you're out and about, when you're in the public, you're having fun with your friends and family, please practice social distancing as well as wear the mask.
but if you're walking your dog, nobody's around, do you need to wear the mask then? It's just you and your dog just going up and down the block.
Yeah, it's
have it with you, right?
You know, so if you ever see me outside, I'm gonna wear my mask. That's important because if you're walking your dog, someone could walk by and they could cough in your face, they could sneeze on you. And then if you don't have any protection, then you may get COVID-19. So please just wear your mask. I know sometimes it could be too hot, it can be uncomfortable, but it really is gonna protect you. So please make sure you wear that mask.
Well, that's why you're the Chief Health Officer. Give us good information like that. Last question is from Keith Williams, Vaughn Street Block Club. He asked,
what measures would this health department recommend to the community to maintain the progress that the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan have established in lowering the impact of the COVID-19 virus?
Yeah, so again, Keith, wonderful question. You know, I sound, like I said, I sound like a little broken record, but wearing the mask, very important, making sure that you practice social distancing. I saw the other day, and I can't remember where I saw it, but there was a Black club, and they were outside having fun, and they were dancing, but they were socially distanced. I believe they were doing some sort of dance, but it was wonderful because they were having a good time, interacting with each other, but still following those precautions, but also making sure that you wash your hands. If you look at my hands, you'll see how cracked they are because I'm obsessive about washing my hands, but making sure you use soap and water, wash your hands for 20 seconds. If you don't have soap and water, you can use a alcohol-based hand sanitizer as long as it's 60% alcohol. So if you follow those 3 guidelines, again, social distancing, wearing a mask, or washing your hands, that's going to help to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
we want to thank you for joining us today, Chief Health Officer Denise Fair. Before we let you go, anything else you want to add?
Sure, I just want to say thank you. I can't say thank you enough to your leadership as well as the entire City Council. We could not have done this without your support, your leadership, and continuing to drive the message home of staying at home when the stay-at-home order was initiated and following those safety precautions. I also want to thank the Detroiters. It's because of you. The fact that we were able to beat COVID-19 relatively quickly is something to celebrate. We are resilient. We are strong. We are Detroiters, so we know what to do. And in order for us to continue preventing the spread of COVID-19, it's really up to you. So thank you, Detroit, and let's continue to beat COVID-19 because nothing stops Detroit.
Yeah, thank you. And as you see, I'm still at home right now with my dog barking in the background. So again, thank you so much for joining us today, Chief Health Officer Denise Fair. You stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
It is with a heavy heart that we host today's meeting after losing more than 1,400 members of our family, our friends, and co-workers to coronavirus in Detroit. The pandemic took so many good people from us in such a short period of time, and while they may not be here with us physically, their memories will live on with every story that we tell, every photo that we share, every time we say their name. We mourn their sudden loss, but we also celebrate their lives because of how they impacted us and how they inspired us all. Many of us lost a good friend on April 22nd when Tom Wilson Jr. unexpectedly passed from COVID-19. If there was ever an event that our office hosted that involved young people or information sharing or problem solving, Tom was there. In fact, Tom was there for many of us. We know had it not been for COVID-19, Tom would be right here with us on the fourth Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. as he had been for so many years, and we honor his memory today. As we close out our first ever virtual D1 monthly meeting, I want to thank everyone who participated, including you watching at home. We're not sure how long this pandemic will keep us in this situation, but through it all, we will find ways to stay together and make our district, make our city better. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.